Hello, 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 and welcome back, family, to my channel. My name is Huddy, and tonight we're talking New York by Night. As always, this video is not scripted, and these opinions are mine and mine alone. Just a quick disclaimer before we start. Some of you may know that I am a community ambassador for World of Darkness, and so any teasers that you might see for upcoming episodes of New York by Night were likely made by me, meaning I did have early access, but I recorded my thoughts, or at the very least, wrote down some bullet points before moving on to the next episode. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about Season 2, Episode 3, Festivals of Babylon, shall we? First thing to mention is the costuming is on frickin' point. Everyone looks amazing, and Nora's shirt, Always Hungry, paired with the latex gloves, knocked me out. I loved it so much. And we know why everyone is looking their best. The coterie need to escort Lizzie back home to the Bronx to a club called The Cage, as per the request of Rafferty. We begin the scene with Kiem, freshly awakened to another night, who wakes in her haven, and the first task of the night is to walk to a massive painting of an angel that conceals an armory behind it. Kiem grabs some weapons for the night before heading out. This reminds me of Nellie G in LA by Night, who despite being a fashionista was not just beautiful, but deadly. Kiem takes 2 gold daggers and a pistol stowed in a thigh holster. Kiem also spent some time at a local bar admiring people's body parts. Creepy. Braun's early evening is spent looking at his monstrous appearance and decides that tonight, his new coterie is going to see the real him. He also pockets his silver knuckles dusters just in case. Coco, upon awakening, immediately calls out to her assistant Lords and asks after her family's business, which we learn is a shipping company. Lords assures Coco that it's doing well despite her relative absence, and then begins dressing and preparing Coco for the evening, a necessary task that Lasombra struggle with due to their bane. Coco then leaves to find her sire down by the docks, which again reminds me of the vision given to Coco by Lizzie in the last episode. Dead men tell no tales, he sleeps in the deep, below the sun, below hope, below love. It seems like there is a connection between Coco and ship since her sire is down by the docks and she runs a shipping company, but maybe it has to do with the HMS Hussar and its captain Charlie, a tale told to the Anarch coterie. Coco tells her sire about her new coterie and tells them that Rafferty told her that the kindred she met who used illusions on her was of Clan Ravnos. Coco's sire then shares with her a brief history on the clan of tricksters, how they suffered a great calamity that nearly wiped them out to a single member of the clan. Now what he's referring to is called the Week of Nightmares. Despite its name, the Week of Nightmares sprawled across years, sweeping up several thousand vampires in its wave. During the week, an impossibly ancient vampire named Zapathosora arose and purged its own clan, while thin-blooded vampires emerged, inherently carrying omens and portents of Gehenna, and the red star Anathelios blazed in the night sky. If you want to know more about the Week of Nightmares and what happened to the Ravnos clan, you can watch my video about them here. Coco remarks that the Ravnos said he hadn't seen her powers in some time, and her sire remarks that perhaps the Ravnos remembers their wilder nights, when they ran with a different crowd, meaning the Sabbat. Coco asks why they don't run with them now, and he says their purposes changed, and he has no interest in being part of a death cult. He goes on to remind her that they are here on the Prince's grace, as well as Rafferty's assistance in avoiding the Scourge, a term used in Camarilla circles to describe a vampire directly responsible for the sanctioned destruction of vampires at the Prince's bidding. Unlike the sheriff position, the Scourge doesn't have a pretense of investigation, as they are searching out vampires who are guilty by their very nature. Therefore, they, meaning Coco and her sire, cannot make mistakes. They cannot risk their shaky position by being sloppy. He instructs her to be safe and triumphant in her newest mission to the Bronx and tells her to come and see him when it is over. Kalita, awakening in her haven in Hell's Kitchen, also known as Clinton, a neighborhood on the west side of Manhattan, immediately gets in touch with her sire Rafferty and requests a meeting, to which he agrees. Rafferty comments on Kalita's choice of clothes, and she defends it, saying it seems very appropriate for their task this evening. Kalita asks Rafferty his thoughts about the coterie. He exclaims that there's potential. Braun is an excellent blunt instrument to have. Kiem, having known her sire before their final death, he believes there is more to her than meets the eye. As for Coco, Rafferty is not a fan of the Prince's decision to follow the court of Chicago and allow Lasombra into the Ivory Tower, but he acknowledges that her clan is formidable, with powers unfamiliar to most kindred. But of all of them, he advises Kalita to trust Coco the least. Kalita complains about their grade of a B that Rafferty awarded them the night before, and asks after extra credit. Rafferty seems amenable and asks Kalita to look for a kindred named Margot Walker at the cage and to inform him should she be there and to take notes of her activity. Of course, we know that Margot is the government name of Fuego, Rafferty's more than likely illegally embraced Anarch child, and I really want to know why he isn't or hasn't kept better tabs on her. Also absolutely dying for these sisters from the same mister to meet. Rafferty also warns Kalita of the eroding relationship of the Camarilla and Anarchs since the death of Boss Callahan, and reminds her to be safe in their territory. The coterie meet and pick up their kidnapped guest Lizzie, who is of course dressed again in shabby couture. In order to ensure an A grade this time, Rafferty is a little more detailed about his expectations. He wants the coterie to bring Lizzie to the Bronx, escort her inside the club, and to speak to its owner, Richter. With everyone ready to be the teacher's pet, the scene moves to the Bronx. Lizzie, excited to be home, eagerly leads everyone to the entrance, telling the coterie about Bronx Cheer, a kindred band with a thin blood in it. And of course, we know that that thin blood, Francis, is bad news for everyone. Kalita enters with awe activated, and therefore, phones come out, snapping pictures. Coco immediately knocks the nearest phone out of someone's hand, and they get pissed. But I loved how everyone in the coterie sided with Coco, came to her defense, with Kiem making him go away by greasing his palm with some cash. Lizzie is less than happy, and Coco tells her that if a picture of her is taken, the masquerade is in danger, which is more than likely true should the right eyes come across it. The coterie are then greeted by the Consuela. Coco remarks that they share the same first name, as hers is Consuela Elena Hermona Comchese, to which Consuela observes that's a mouthful. The rest of the coterie introduce themselves and they take a look around the main dance floor, noting, of course, the large suspended cage the club is named for. Consuela asks what they think, and of course Braun calls it not pedantic, and remarks that he's surprised that people aren't killing each other in here, as that's what he's heard Anarchs do on a nightly basis, to which Consuela laughs in amusement, assuring him that he's got the wrong idea about them. But Braun dismisses it, saying he knows what he knows, and that she can't fool him. Consuela says if he wants to see Anarchs fight, that he should fight Airbox properly in the pit, and Braun seems agreeable to the idea. Consuela offers to take them on a tour, and of course the first stop is the tanning salon, where a bolted down barber chair sits directly under a skylight. This seems to confirm to Braun exactly what he thought Anarchs were about. Next stop is the pit, a large room with the middle hollowed out and filled with concrete, surrounded by bleachers for the audience, and Braun seems eager to have a rematch in there with Airbox, but only if Airbox is not scared of him. Kiem seems concerned, but Braun tells her that the tanning salon is a veiled threat and they need to show the Anarchs that they aren't to be messed with. Final stop on the tour is Richter's office, where Lizzie, Airbox, and Mario are also waiting for them. Braun mirrors Airbox's stance in the room, while Kalita sits and greets Richter with effortless grace. Coco introduces herself like the perfume, not the cereal, which is another great running joke, and Kiem is pleasant and sits herself down next to Lizzie. The coterie rehash last night's events and inform Richter that the frosted glass is now their territory. Kalita informs Richter, rather than asks, that they're square, and instructs Richter that should either Lizzie or any of his Anarchs wish to tread on their domain, they need to make a formal request of either this coterie or Rafferty first. Kalita was her most domineering venture in this meeting, and I was enraptured. Richter tells them to stick around and see how the better half live, but all of them scoff at the idea that the Anarchs have it better. Richter says that there's a difference between freedom and autonomy, and Anarchs, unlike Camarilla, have both. Kalita asks Richter about Torque, but Richter does not seem to be loyal to this new Baron, claiming he can be the Baron of his boot for all he cares. And I think that strikes the coterie as odd. There's no way that they would not ever follow Prince Panhard for the simple reason that she is Prince, because that is what you do. Oh, these sweet summer fledglings. The coterie decide to stick around for a little while, and Richter, much as Lizzie did, suggests staying for the Bronx Cheer, complimenting Francis the Thin Blood's talent. Braun asks about the term Thin Blood, claiming he's not familiar with it. Now, I have a whole video about Thin Bloods that you can watch here, but very briefly, a Thin Blood is created when a 13th or higher generation vampire embraces a mortal. While formerly belonging to the 14th, 15th, or even 16th generation, these classifications don't really mean anything to Thin Bloods, as they exhibit a wide variety of traits with no connection to their supposed generation. A 14th generation Thin Blood may be too weak to blood bond a mortal, while a 15th might still retain the ability to embrace, and vice versa. Among the Duskborn, the lines are blurred, but what is certain is that the blood of Kindred gets thinner with every generation. Richter asks Kalita to save a dance for him, and boy does Richter have a type, and by that I mean he's into Ventru so much. Before the coterie head down to the dance floor, Kiem slips Lizzie her card, and Kalita receives a text from Rafferty of a picture of the fiery Margot. Braun is interested in getting up to the cage to see the floor from so high up, but is reticent about being seen. Consuela tells him to be himself in here, and if anyone gives him guff about it, to make them sorry, and Braun seems overwhelmingly relieved by the idea. Coco is strongly against the idea of Braun fighting in the pit, worried that the Anarchs will cheat, worried that it might be a trap, but Kalita and Kiem seem to think it's a good idea to squash the beef here, and that it might dissuade Airbox from seeking out a rematch somewhere unexpected. In response, Coco retreats to the shadows and begins reconnoitering the club. As Kalita snakes through the crowd looking for Margot, Kiem suggests to Braun that they dance in the cage, and he immediately agrees. Braun easily makes his way up there with Soaring Leap, while Kiem, with some successful rolls, parkours her way up after him. They begin tearing up the dance floor together, and they find themselves having a lot of fun, and Kiem ponders if maybe the Anarchs aren't as bad as they've been told. Braun tells Kiem not to get fooled, that they only enjoy this freedom because the Camarilla keep the masquerade safe. Coco discovers a room filled with people, and in the center is none other than Simone, a member of Clan Ministry. The Anarchs met her in Season 1. Coco introduces herself, and Simone offers her refreshment, but she declines, claiming that she enjoys her food cold, like revenge. Simone remarks, "Ew," and seems to lose interest in her, for the moment anyway, and she returns to her vessels, which gives Coco the cue to leave. Kalita runs into Consuela, and she asks her about Margot. Consuela says she knows her, but she hasn't seen her tonight. Kalita then tells Consuela to let her know that she's looking for her should she see her. Kalita compliments the band, and Consuela agrees, introducing us for the first time to the names of Francis's bandmates. Darby, who's a local, and Frida, who's from Europe. Kalita then asks Consuela's feelings about Torque, but she blows raspberries, claiming that he used to shout about revolution, but since Callahan's final death, all he talks about is making peace with the Camarilla. Consuela then asks if Kalita is really going to dance with Richter, which Kalita responds with she hopes so, and just as with Fuego in Season 1, Consuela is visibly upset and storms off to handle other business. But Kalita is not alone for long, because Mario walks right up to her and introduces himself, again a coterie member of Richter's we met in Season 1, Episode 6. He thanks her for bringing Lizzie back and chastises Airbox for letting her go into Manhattan. Mario claims to be a gangrel without using those words and asks if Coco is really a Lasombra. But Kalita isn't interested in talking about her coterie, without them present anyway. So instead, Mario offers to escort her to the pit, which Kalita agrees to as she puts her arm into his. Coco, still stalking the shadows, runs into none other than our favorite Lasombra in the Big Apple, Julia Sovinsky. We first met Julia back in Season 1, Episode 7, so if you want to run down on who she is and how big a deal her presence is in the city, you can watch that here. I also need to note Xander's face when he realizes who it is, and we love to see more Julia fans and fans of Shadows of New York. Julia says it's started, that more of us are showing up, and Coco asks what she's doing here, and she says she's been assigned to look into Callahan's death, which is no surprise to those of us who have played Shadows of New York. Julia comments that it's interesting more Lasombra are finally showing up, and although Coco tries to find out about Julia's investigation, she dances around the question, answering only in vague shrugs. Offering Coco a cigarette, she fails her rouse check to activate the Blush of Life, and we hear Coco's beast urge her to diablerize Julia. Julia asks how Coco does her makeup so well, and she tells her about her assistant, to which Julia says that she has someone to do that too. Julia is referring to her girlfriend Dakota, and if the canon ending of Shadows of New York is indeed true, well, Julia will need someone else to help her get ready at night. When Julia makes her egress, the coterie meet down at the pit, where two Kindred are already going at it, while the crowd cheers and screams at the display. Braun is eager to really let loose in the ring, so he heads over to another Nosferatu named Ogilvy. If that name is a reference to something besides the New York-based ad agency, it's totally lost on me. Braun's cousin, as he calls him, is taking bets and putting names on the roster, and when Braun asks to take on Airbox, Ogilvy tells him that Airbox is undefeated, which only makes Braun more excited. As his coterie take their seats near Richter in a VIP box, Braun and Airbox enter the ring, and Kiem places a $1,000 bet on Braun to win. Now, the fight lasts a significant number of rounds, an extended test, if you will, and instead of giving you a blow-by-blow, which honestly I don't remember accurately enough, what's important is that although Braun takes his licks, including enduring bite and claw attacks from Airbox that almost put Braun into torpor, he does eventually get the advantage on Airbox by using his silver knuckles, knocking Airbox into torpor. Of course, Lizzie is not happy with this outcome and swears to Braun that even though Airbox didn't kill him, despite wanting to, she will kill Braun for Airbox. Lizzie is great. I love her character. Richter congratulates Braun and insists once more that Anarchs have more fun, which half of the coteries seem to concede to. Braun is in a terrible state, so Coco actually carries Braun down to Simone's room, where human vessels wait to feed hungry, injured vampires. Kiam takes the time to touch many of the vessels while Braun feeds, and Braun relishes in his victory, restoring any spent willpower as the episode ends. If you haven't already, please go follow the World of Darkness on Twitch and YouTube, and if you can, sub to those channels as well. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to me, and let me know your thoughts on Season 2, Episode 3, Festivals of Babylon in the comments. As always, I'll see you in the next one.